The foster coordinator said he'd never bonded with anyone. She wrote it in the file. The Maine Coon Cat's name was Cleo, and he had been with the Ivan family for 3 years before Sasha stopped dismissing what he was doing. She was a radiologist. She thought this mattered. It would turn out that her professional knowledge was exactly what delayed her understanding. Ivan and Sasha had Vera, who was 11 months and had recently learned to point at things as a method of requesting them. She pointed at Cleo constantly. He bore this with the patience of an animal who had already decided that Vera was the most important thing in the building. The behavior started on a Monday. Nothing obvious. Cleo began positioning himself between Vera and a specific area of the house, not aggressively, not anxiously, simply with the calm, particular resolve of an animal executing a task that required no audience approval. He would stand there. He would wait. If Vera moved toward the area, he moved with her. If she reached for something, he was already there. Sasha moved him the first time. He returned before she'd crossed the room. She moved him the second time with greater deliberateness. He returned in under 4 minutes. By the third day, she had begun consulting her radiologist colleagues about canine resource guarding. The wrong question, arriving from the wrong framework, producing entirely wrong conclusions. Her expertise was the problem. She had a category for what she was observing. The category was incorrect. Ivan was less certain. He had no professional framework to apply, which meant he was watching what was actually happening instead of watching for confirmation of what he already thought was happening. He mentioned it to his brother. His brother said he'd heard of something like this. Ivan said he'd heard of it too. Neither of them said the thing out loud because it sounded like the kind of thing you didn't say until you had proof. On the 7th night, Sasha sat on the kitchen floor at 11 p.m. with her back against the refrigerator, watching Cleo maintain his position near the area he'd been attending to all week. She had a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. She had her phone with the browser open to a veterinary behavior website she wasn't reading. She was watching the dog. He turned and looked at her once, directly. The kind of look that carries information. Then he turned back. 2 days later, the thing happened. The details are specific, which is why they matter. Cleo began a behavior he had never exhibited in 3 years. He moved from his position and pressed himself against Ivan's legs repeatedly in the direction of the phone that was sitting on the counter. Ivan reached for it. Cleo continued pressing toward it. Ivan called the number he needed to call. What the pediatric neurologist found was absence seizures. The pediatric neurologist explained the science afterward. Dogs can detect the specific electrical activity preceding an absence event. The window between detectable and symptomatic in this specific case was the window in which Cleo had been standing in exactly that spot, in exactly that position, for exactly that many days. She had been having undetected seizures for weeks. The EEG confirmed 12 episodes in one night, the pediatric neurologist said. Sasha wrote it down, not because she needed to, she would remember it without writing, but because she needed to do something with her hands in that moment. She had a category now. The category was, I had a professional framework that was wrong. The dog had no professional framework and was right. This is not an abstract thing. The family went through the math together later, the number of days, the progression of what had been building, the window they'd had. Cleo had started attending to the situation before any instrument would have detected it, before any symptom would have been visible, before any human sense would have registered anything as wrong. He was working from a different data set. The family modified the house. They had the inspection. They followed the protocol. They thanked everyone they were supposed to thank. What they couldn't do was fully account for Cleo's contribution in any of the official paperwork. There wasn't a field for it. There isn't a field for it. The pediatric neurologist put early detection in the report. Early detection is accurate. It is also incomplete. Sasha sits differently on the kitchen floor now, differently than she sat in the beginning of this story. Lower, more settled, with Cleo beside her instead of across the room from her. She had a dog who'd been paying attention to things she didn't have instruments to measure. She doesn't say she was wrong. She says she was working with incomplete data. Cleo has no opinion on the distinction. He is busy attending to Vera, who is 11 months and has recently learned that pointing at the dog works somewhat better than pointing at most other things. He is patient with her about it. He has always been patient. Has your dog ever done something that didn't make sense, until suddenly it did? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe so the next story finds you before the noise does. She told her sister about it 6 weeks later, over the phone, in the specific way you tell a story when you're still not entirely sure the words are adequate to the thing that happened. Her sister listened to the whole thing without interrupting. Then she said, "I believe you. I believe dogs could do this before you told me." That's the thing about these stories. The people who need convincing are rarely the ones who end up in them.